Heather Christian, and this is BMI's How I Wrote That Behind the Score. When I was initially invited onto the creative team of the Shivering Truth, I was both thrilled and intimidated, as I had never scored to an animatic before. To my delight, this meant that my piece of the overall puzzle, which had to be one of the first things that was made, rather than the last, which is not how I am used to working in film and television composition. And this very small adjustment, as it turns out, is a very large cognitive shift, actually. It makes you feel like you are the generative with the freedom to follow your desire. The Shivering Truth on Adult Swim is a surrealistic stream of consciousness dark comedy told in voiceover with lush claymation. The art direction and the writing were doing this incredible dance, this highbrow tactic to tell these vulgar stories. So I felt like the score should slot right in and be as sophisticated and earnest as I could make it. The score should take itself seriously inside this dark and irreverent piece. That's a grand counterpoint. That is what makes it creepy. That is what makes it funny. That the score is not in on the joke. Vernon Chapman, the writer and performer of the voiceover, and I have very similar tastes when it comes to scores, and that we both have a distaste for MIDI programming and orchestral sounds. Plus, since the claymation had such a tactile feel to it, it made sense to me that the music had to feel homemade, that it was made by a human. It wanted to have breath in it. It wanted to have nuance. It wanted to have imperfection. Now, these two things together, that it wanted to be lush and expansive, but also that it needed to be largely acoustic and handmade by me and a small group of real musicians, were parameters that turned out to be super helpful in figuring out what the first idea had to be. Now, since I do not have an orchestra at my disposal currently, in order to make something grand, it had to be grand in form. So I approached the episodes in both seasons as tiny little brief suites. Formerly, I thought if the music was sophisticated, I could get away with making it out of very few instruments, mostly piano, voice, cello, saxophone, flute, and a host of samples of animal sounds. What does this mean? In practice, this is what it sounded like. In season 1, there was an episode that became a late 60s suite of love songs, and that becomes obvious in this piece called Love Affair with Yourself, which is a direct borrow from the aura and the timbre of Nina Simone's performance of Namakitapa. Let's just listen to a little bit of that. If you've ever heard Namakitapa by Nina Simone, which I sort of count as one of the most romantic and heartbreaking songs I've ever heard, it has these elements. It has the celesta. It has a sort of a voice as instrument quality. I mean, all of Nina's music does, but there's a wholeness to the tone, and of course piano. Okay. There's another piece in a completely different direction. There was an episode that became a suite of only vocal music, of oral fugue. That's what I was calling it, at least. I guess I made that term up. Which I made with a classical sensibility, with the bones of classical etudes and Bach inventions, but sung in a tongue-in-cheek way. That sounds like this. So if you're familiar with Bach inventions, there's cannoning going on, and then there's like a pedal, and then there's context. So I wanted to do all of these things. I also sort of wanted it to sound like an early Mozart piece. Like one of those pieces that Mozart wrote when he was like 6. And then this sort of develops and gets a little more frenetic. We bring in a little orchestral percussion. Okay. And then I'm just going to play you one more example, which is an episode that I made with my dear friend, Patrick Brenner, who is a saxophonist. Sometimes when you're doing this kind of work, you just start coming up with mad thinking exercises in order to get yourself writing. So that's what we did. We ripped off, I invented a thinking exercise where I decided that we were going to rip off the motion of synthesized randomizers and arpeggiators for his sax lines that he would play live on his saxophone. As well as we were going to recreate MIDI patches that were in the sound bank of a Casio Tone Bank junk keyboard from 1992 that I had lying around. We ended up using a lot of those. So that's what this is. It's called Physics Sax. This is actually a lot harder than it sounds. But it is a lot of fun. This was actually a patch from, I believe, a mariachi loop that was in that keyboard. And I like the idea of using it, like making this incredibly lowbrow thing a little more highbrow again to put under this other lowbrow thing. Counterpoint. Counterpoint was king. Scoring in this way with no regard to time code first, to me, means that you are still staying proactively creative and not just printing cues. I am so grateful to the whole creative team at the Shivering Truth that got behind me while I ran these bonkers exercises to hopefully come up with something unique and totally of itself. And I am so pleased to have been given this award. Thank you, BMI, for this beautiful and totally impressive award. I am so thankful. Thank you for listening.